I feel like I lose my cool all the time.
Yelling is problematic if you do it all the time because then it doesn't mean anything.
I feel like, can you just give me a list of when I can yell and it's okay? Episode 218, is it ever okay for me to yell at my kids? Everyone is doing so much in the parenting world, and I have found I'm losing my cool constantly, so I was thrilled to be able to talk about the subject on yelling. I'll get right to the letter.
Yep, let's do it.
Dear Dr. Lisa, I'm reaching out to you as a worried and exhausted parent who feels like I'm losing my way. I'm a working mom who has to go into the office daily, juggle work trips, and manage everything that comes with raising a family. It feels like I'm constantly stretched thin, and in the midst of all the stress and chaos, I've become the parent I never wanted to be, the one who yells all the time. The mornings are the hardest. Getting the kids out the door for school feels like an endless battle. Then it starts all over again in the afternoons and evenings. Homework, study, chores, bedtime routines. It's like every part of the day is another opportunity for me to lose my temper. I hear myself yelling at them constantly, and I hate it. I know this isn't the kind of parent I want to be. I worry that my yelling is damaging my connection with my kids. I also fear that I'm modeling the worst behavior and the worst way to handle stress, teaching them to respond with frustration rather than patience. But I don't know how to stop. It's like the stress just takes over, the words come out before I even have a chance to think. I'd be so grateful for your guidance. Are there strategies to help me stop yelling and manage these moments better? How can I stay calm when everything feels overwhelming? I want to create a more peaceful home, both for my kids and for myself, but I'm struggling to figure out how to get there. Thank you for all the work you do and the wisdom you share. I'm hopeful you can help me and so many other parents like me find a better way. Oh my gosh. Man. Amen to every bit of this letter.
A triple plus for honesty here, right? I mean, absolutely.
So we can just acknowledge this is a very common thing in parenting.
Yeah. So Reena, do you yell at your kids?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I don't want to, but here, put it this way. I feel like I lose my cool all the time. This year more than most, right? And I think part of it is because I'm entering the phase of challenging, and I just don't have the patience for somebody to challenge what I'm asking you to do, or somebody not to care. But is it harmful for our relationship with kids when parents yell?
I think occasional yelling, and I'll tell you under the conditions, I think that maybe it's not harmful. But if you're yelling all the time, yeah. I mean, it would be harmful for any relationship between any two humans if one person's yelling all the time and the other person is on the receiving end of that.
Do you know what it is? My kids say you're bringing in bad vibes. So I might not be yelling, but they're just like, I'm like, can you please, did it? And they look at that, even me, like, hey, it's like more nagging, but they view that equally like yelling.
Well, and actually, interesting that you should say that. We have some research lab studies that—
Oh, God.
No, to teenagers who feel everything more intensely, what actually may objectively be like an adult being stern is perceived by them as yelling. So you might not even be yelling and your kid might be feeling like you're yelling. So that's not great.
That is exactly what they feel. Yeah. I think if they were here.
No, the lab science has their back.
Walk us through sort of the potential consequences of having a parent who yells all the time.
Well, there's a few. I mean, and they're real. So one is like, I think kids are going to just start to be avoidant, or kids are going to yell back. I mean, I don't think or kids are just going to buckle, right? I mean, no outcomes that we really want.
Yeah.
I think also yelling is problematic if you do it all the time because then it doesn't mean anything. If you yell about everything, then, everything is at the same level. And one of the ways to think about it is, a little bit like, did you ever have one of those bad alarm, like a smoke alarm that went off all the time?
Yeah.
Like you're making toast and it goes off, like you blow out a candle, it goes off. Smoke alarms are supposed to warn us when there's a problem. And they're supposed to be loud when there's a problem to get our attention. Reena, if you had a smoke alarm like that went off all the time for no reason, what did you do with it?
Took the battery out.
Do not exactly do. What people
do not do.
Yeah. People just take the battery out, which is basically, they're like, I'm just going to ignore this because it is meaningless. It's annoying and meaningless. It's not giving me any feedback about the severity of fire hazard, or in the case of parenting, my parent yelling isn't telling me anything because I can't tell if it's a little thing or a middle-sized thing or a big thing I've done because they yell at everything.
Yeah.
Kids start to ignore it. They detach from it because, frankly, they have to. And so the risk is you actually don't get helping them build a good conscience, right? The goal of correcting kids, whether it's done gently or, it can also be done less gently, and we'll talk about when that is, how to think that through. The goal is to help them start to internalize a sense of conscience. If they're about to do something that's not okay, we want them to actually become a little bit anxious. And we want them to become anxious because there's a part of them that's saying, don't go there. And maybe part of them is saying, don't go there because in the past, the parent has become angry about it. And so that's a good reason to not go there. You don't get that sort of development of conscience with a kid who's taken the battery out of the alarm, who just has stopped listening altogether.
So, oh God, I have so many questions. I don't even know where to begin on this. Like, I feel like, can you just give me a list of when I can yell and it's okay?
Okay. Well, okay. So, is it ever okay? Right. I think that that's a really important question. I am not going to say no. I am not going to say there are no conditions under which, all conditions are unacceptable. I do think there can be times where if it is really big, the parent might be like, I can't believe you didn't feed the dog for 3 days. If it's really big, or I can't believe you snuck out of the house in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Right? I don't think it should ever involve swearing at kids. I don't think it should involve being abusive with them in your language. But Reena, picture this scenario where a kid sneaks out, comes driving in at 6 a.m. hoping to get in before the parents realize. Parents are standing in the kitchen waiting for that kid, and the kid comes in, and the parent's like, hi, we want to talk with you about what has happened. Right? The kid's going to be like, all right, this does not add up. Like, this is super weird. They're expecting the parents to be like, what the what? Like, where the heck have you been?
Yeah.
So, but it's got to be for the big stuff. So it's got to be rare. It's got to be rare. And then, there are some families I can imagine who are like, it's always big stuff with my kid. Like, my kid is acting out like at an 11 all the time. That's a different kind of problem. That is a problem where your kid is suffering in ways that involve taking it out on the people around them.
Yeah.
You and your kid deserve quality support, professional intervention, right? If you're yelling at your kid all the time because they are misbehaving big time all the time, please, get yourself and your family the support you deserve. The occasional, good kids do dumb things, and sometimes good kids do really dumb things.
Yeah.
The kid's expecting the parent to react to that.
Got it. So are there long-term consequences when you yell at your kid?
I think yes. I think if you're yelling all the time, not the, what I'm going to call, for lack of a better term, sort of permissible voice raising under expectable situations. If you're yelling all the time, I think that you're not going to enjoy your kid very much. Your kid's not enjoying you very much. All of the, sort of warmth that you want to have, it's very hard to make happen in that context. I do think kid's going to avoid you. I think, the letter writer very aptly says, kid's going to think that this is how we cope, right? When things are frustrating and things aren't going well. Like, kid, don't be surprised if you get a call from school that your kid yells a lot, right? I think that there can be really interesting ramifications of this. So let's help this sweet person who so sweetly wrote to us think about how to not do this this way.
So when you're overwhelmed and you've got so much going on, from work to running the household to dealing with your kids, how do you cope with your level of stress and not yell at your children?
Yep. Okay. So the magic words you just said are level of stress. So one way we can think about this, Reena, is let's imagine that we're all like a vessel, like a pitcher of water or something, a pitcher. And let's say that there's water in it and that the water represents our stress level. When I listen to this letter, I get that image in my mind. And what the image is that this person's water level is right at the lip of the vessel all the time, right? Like that the baseline demands on this person are so high that then their kid acts like a kid, dawdles on the way out the door, comes home and needs to be, sat on to do some homework. And that throws another, cup of water on, and this person is spilling over. This person is spilling over. And because the water level is so close to the edge, to the top of the vessel all the time, this person's spilling over all the time. So the solution, a solution among others, is this water level has to come down. Something has to get this person to a place where their baseline stress is not so high so that they can actually be less reactive to the unavoidable stresses of deciding to have children.
That is so interesting. And so how do you walk yourself away? Are there strategies when you feel like you are bubbling over that work to get it together?
Two questions, really. One is, how do we get the level down? And then if you can't, what do you do? So let's start with the second one, which is what you're asking, which is, if you feel like you're about to lose it, should you remove yourself? And I would be like, yeah. Okay. Right. So I think that, becoming conscious of that, and even the parent saying, I'm really angry. I feel like I'm going to yell. I don't want to yell. I'm going to go take a walk around the block. I will be back.
Yeah.
Do that. It means that you're not yelling at your kid. It also is you modeling better coping in the place of coping that you're not feeling good about. But I also think, at the top of the letter, there was like, this person has so much on their plate, job, kids, I can't help but think, okay, those stresses may not be negotiable, right?
Yeah.
They may not be able to get those down. The supports have got to go up, right? What other supports can this person have? Whether it's asking for more help from family or talking to their employer about whether there's some flexibility to be had in terms of their work demands.
But what if none of that's realistic? Like, work just expects you to do this. Like, you can't go to them. You're juggling the household and the kids. Like, it is what it is. You might have some childcare, you might not, but you are really the one carrying the burden of all of this.
Yeah.
How do we walk away in a way that, like, we don't feel like we're on this treadmill and about to fall off of it?
I don't want to be Pollyannish about this. Like, I know there are families who are in exactly the situation you described, right? Yeah. Or I think about, families who are impoverished or families who don't even have a home, right? We have research on what it means to live without a permanent residence or a stable residence, right? And that they are moving their family from shelter to shelter or couch surfing, right? Like, to suggest like, oh, what you need to do is to garner more support so that your stresses come down and then you won't feel so reactive to your kids. Like, that's just like, it's not an option. It's they're living at the absolute edge and trying to manage so much. And the fact that they're upright is kind of a miracle, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So there are families in that spot. I also think that sometimes we feel that there's nothing to be done and there may be more options than we are willing or have considered up till now. If a person finds themselves in this situation, I do think there is value in saying, where can I take some of the strain off of this system? And it can even be things like, is there, can we buy like more frozen prepared foods?
That's a great one.
Like if part of what's straining the system is trying to figure out how to get dinner made and then cleaning up dinner.
That's a huge stress. I have to tell you, that's a
it's a big stress, right?
Yeah.
And, as you know, we love Costco, and Costco actually has some pretty decent prepared frozen meals, right? Yeah. If doing that a couple nights a week puts a little room in the system. The thing I like about the water and the vessel metaphor is it doesn't matter what's causing the stress, right? Yeah. A lot of stuff is filling up that vessel. It's dinner, it's the dog, it's, maybe a difficult boss. Anything you do to address that is going to drop the water line and make you less reactive to your kids.
Yeah. I want to get back to yelling. If you have yelled and yelled and yelled and you realize you've got a problem, but that's what you've done, can you repair past damage on yelling?
I think you can. I'm a big believer in repair. I don't think it'll be easy. And I think you have to be serious about the repair. But I do think that you could very, very thoughtfully and carefully go to your kids and say, I owe you a lot of apology about how yelly I have been. I don't like it. I know you don't like it. It's not the parent I mean to be. I'm going to give you an explanation. This is not an excuse. talk about your stress level. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do about that stress level so that I'm going to try to fix this. And then say, my aim going forward is to yell far, far less. And I don't know that you want to promise, like, I will never yell again, right? Kids will be like, yeah, we'll just be waiting for it. But say, like, I'm going to work on this, and I'll do my best, and I'm really sorry, and I'm really trying to fix it. And then you have to do it, right? You can't be like, there, I apologized. We're back to square one. No. The apology is the first step, and then the rest flows from that.
So, Lisa, what if your kids are legitimately misbehaving? What approach do you take then when you're so frustrated you really want to yell at them because they keep doing it over and over again?
So I think you start, if you can, and if you've got the bandwidth, to be like, hey, knock it off, right? Knock it off is a perfectly reasonable thing to say to kids. And again, I've sort of gestured at this in various ways. Kids expect it. Kids know what they're supposed to do and not supposed to do once they get past like 4 or 5 years old, right? Like they know the rules. Even 3-year-olds know the rules.
But knock it off, I feel like for so many parents just doesn't work. Like they keep doing it.
Okay. Give it a try. Right. Start there. Be like, knock it off. Okay. I think then another layer of this is, hey, you and I both know that you're doing something you're not supposed to be doing, right? Refer to the kid's knowledge of this. Cut it out. Cut it out. Like, see if they'll do it. I think, you need to stop. It's time for you to stop. I think you can start to do that. I think you can start to have consequences. I'm asking you to stop. If you don't stop, we were going to go get pizza tonight. If we're not, we're not going to get to, like come up with some consequence that makes sense. I think, Reena, that was always, when my kids were little, like that was always the hardest thing to like come up with like some rational consequence. Cause I invariably threatened something that I wanted. Like, if you don't cut it out, we're not going to the zoo. And I'm like, oh man, now we're stuck at home today all day. So try to come up with something that actually, if it can fit the crime, if it can, be something that you really will follow through on, that's really best. I will tell you, Reena, I made an adjustment in my parenting between my 2 daughters. So older daughter, I apologize that you were the one I learned this on. Younger daughter, lucky you. Because one thing I noticed with my older daughter, and especially when she was a, younger kid and could, the way in which they push buttons, is I would be like, hey, please stop. Don't do that anymore. While I was quietly getting really, really angry. And then I'd be like, and then I would sort of lose it and surprise her and frighten her. And I felt terrible about that. So I think hopefully with her, but definitely with the second kid, the adjustment I made that actually, people can certainly disagree with this. This is something I felt worked pretty well for us. Is, when a kid was misbehaving, I would say to my second daughter, I'd say, look, I need you to stop. I need you to cut it out, knock it off. And I would do it in a calm voice. And then I would say, you know what? My voice sounds calm, but I'm actually getting angry. And having to ask you over and over again, I'm starting to feel mad. And if I have to keep asking you, I'm going to be mad.
Ooh, I like that.
It worked because at least for us, it worked. Here's what I found is that then if she kept at it, I'd be like, all right, and then I could be, hopefully never unkind or, but I could raise the volume level a bit. I could show that I was frustrated and angry. And I didn't feel bad about it because I was like, you totally had a warning. Like this did not come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I will also tell you with my particular kid, but I really work hard to never generalize from my experience of parenting to anybody else's experience of parenting because there's so much that's so different family to family. Usually when I'd say, you know what, I sound calm, but I actually don't feel that calm and I'm working hard to not get mad. But if this keeps up, I'm going to be really kind of frustrated. Usually the kid was like, okay, I'm good. Like they would back off at that point, like that was enough to bring it back under control.
I like that warning that you're saying, and my voice may be calm, but I'm about to lose it.
You're making me angry. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a great way for them to also learn, like this is something you can use as well, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about strategies that work.
Yeah.
That aren't yelling.
Yeah. And I think in the home, like we do get angry with each other sometimes.
Yeah.
Right. And I think to say like, you know what, I sound calm. I don't feel calm. I'm getting pretty frustrated and I'm, you need to know that. I think in the outside world, I think it's a great thing to model. I think, it's so interesting to think, Reena, I'm sure you have this from your journalism background about like, de-escalation strategies for when you have to have conversations with really difficult people, right? Like, Do you have were there things that like you learned like when somebody was being out of line that you had techniques for managing that?
No, because in TV news, everybody's always out of line. So it's always a hot
It's
mess.
like standard fare.
It's like just standard fare. People are not nice to each other, I feel. But I will tell you something someone told me recently, which was somebody who was acting really obnoxious and at a business meeting. And the person who's way older than me and wiser said, be like water. Like, just don't feed the fire with fire. And just be like water, just back off. And I actually found that to be interesting because the analogy of meeting fire with fire just is not a good thing, right?
It's such a good analogy because the other thing is like kids yell at their parents, I think, at least if not as much, if not more than parents yell at their kids. And especially if you're on the receiving end of your kid yelling
I have
back
no
at
patience.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah, yelling back at them is not going to make it better,
That's
right?
a good point. Yeah.
So I think, that guidance around like if your kid is yelling, if you can be like, we're not going to have this conversation this way.
Yeah.
Like you might have something you need to tell me. We're not having it this way.
Yeah. Lisa, before we wrap up, I just want to ask you, is there, I was joking about a cheat sheet for when it's okay to yell, but is it ever like, can you just give us basic guidelines, just for us as we're leaving to take away? What are the times where it's really okay to yell?
Okay. I think it should be rare. I'm going to say again, there should be nothing abusive about it in any form. And frankly, I think it's when your kid totally expects it. I know kids are very aware of when they have crossed a significant line. And I do think if you can say, would it be strange to my kid if I responded to this the way I responded to them, forgetting to put their coat on the hook? If you can say yes to that, I think that lets you know that your kid is not going to be surprised if you raise your voice and reasonably expects that you're going to raise your voice. But again, very, very rare, never abusive.
Very rare, never abusive. So Lisa, what do you have for us for parenting to go?
Well, so Reena, it is interesting to this question of like, can we get angry at our kids, or what does it mean to get angry at our kids? Because they make us angry, right? I mean, like, there's no question that having kids from time to time, you will feel angry with them. And I think sometimes we can be like, oh, you never want to be angry with your kids. You always want to be, as gentle as absolutely possible. I think the counter argument is part of what happens at home is we teach kids how the world works. And if kids are being jerks, or if they're being turkeys, or if they're being totally out of line, the world is not going to be gentle with them. If they are inappropriate, their boss will get angry with them. Their coworkers will get angry with them. And part of our job at home is to prepare kids for those realities. And so when kids are out of line, whether it's yelling or a more moderated response, to be like, hey, cut it out. What are you doing? Or even better, that's not like you. What's going on? I think is part of how we show kids what they should reasonably expect from the world beyond, and help them ideally not even go down that road because they know what they're going to get.
I've never tried that before, of telling them just to cut it out, because at the point the water has boiled over and I'm very angry. But I'm going to try that. I'm going to see how it works. You really believe in it. I think that's great. I'll see you next week.
See you next week.